All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and did I say good evening? I meant good afternoon. It's been a while. It's been a while. I'm sorry I took a slightly extended vacation, but I'm going to give a very brief rundown of what happened. So I expected to have to take a week, maybe 2 weeks of vacation, just because I was traveling a decent amount and all that good stuff. So that was the 2 weeks in August. The other two. Basically, it hit the fan because of, short staffing at work. That's the short answer. Basically, it was the Adventures of Shark Boy and doesn't know how to pull out girl. Anyway. So, I'm back. I'm going to try to keep this very short today because a lot happened. Like, an insane amount of stuff has happened over the past month. And the general consensus is that Democrats have been benefiting from the post-Dobbs electoral landscape, and that Democrats are probably going to buck the trend and do really well in the midterms. And I'm going to say pump the brakes on those takes. I know it sounds like I'm still clinging on to the pre-Dobbs decision electoral environment, and I'm not. I don't want to make a bad decision too hasty just because there's a lot of stuff going on. And so first off, New York, those special elections, those did favor the Democrats. I'll say that right out the gate because Democrats overperformed there. But technically, Republicans did overperform in Alaska. And I know the Democrats won the Alaska special election for U.S. House. I know that a Democrat did win. I'm aware of this. But technically, Republicans overperformed because 60% of Alaskan voters wanted a Republican. However, more than half of people who put a second choice down, basically the people who voted for Begich, or Begich, I don't actually know. About half of them said they didn't want Sarah Palin representing them. So this was a case where candidate matters. Sarah Palin is uniquely not going to win an elected office in Alaska ever again. Okay? She just isn't. Okay? So, yes, Alaska voters, on the whole, wanted a Republican. They just didn't want that Republican. So, pump the brakes there. That is about a 5% overperformance by the Republicans in the post-Dobbs environment in a state that has been getting swingier, more and more likely to elect a Democrat. And guess what? They did actually finally elect a Democrat. Partially because of the unique way they do voting, but also partially because one of the Republicans was uniquely terrible for the state. And which, it makes it hilarious because she's a former governor. But it's Sarah Palin, okay? It's Sarah Palin. I don't think I need to say too much more. She's not well-liked in Alaska anymore because basically she ran all... There's a lot of drama that surrounds Sarah Palin in Alaska, so that's one where I'm going to say, listen, let's not judge whether or not it's a good electoral environment just because a Democrat wound up with the House race. Hey, sounds weird. But there's a few other interesting data points. If you look at, and I can do this, but I'm not going to because I'm trying to make this quick. If you look at the generic ballot polling from 2010 and 2014, the most recent similar, not the same, similar midterms where you had a Democrat in the Oval Office as well as, in 2010 at least, you had Democrats controlling the House and the Senate. In 2014, they only controlled the Senate, not the House. The polling cycle is actually extremely similar to this year's polling cycle, where Democrats led in the year prior, and then Republicans flipped it around New Year's and took a small but comfortable lead, about 2 to 3-ish%. Then summer hits, that polling lead disappears completely, and then towards the end of summer, Republicans surge forward and never look back, and they win the midterms. In 2010, the Democrats, quote, got shellacked in the midterms. So what happened there with the polling? Well, I don't know. But it's kind of unique. But is it? Not really. And I'm going to explain. And here's just how similar this year is to, I'm going to actually say 2010. Okay? So why is it similar? 2010. I believe we had a somewhat controversial Supreme Court ruling. I want to say it was regarding the Affordable Care Act, and I'm pretty sure that was 2010. But this one was actually in favor of the Democrats, so whatever. It was controversial. That matters. Which way it was controversial matters as well, I suppose. But the Republican Party looked completely fractured because you had Tea Partiers upsetting major incumbents. I want to say the Speaker of the House was primaried by a Tea Partier. So, yeah. The Republican Party looked completely fractured. And the Democrats were scoring some what people thought were policy wins. And in the end, it did not matter. Republicans won the national congressional vote by, I want to say, close to 7%. It was bad. It was really bad. And it wound up netting the GOP 63 seats. Now, you could say the Dobbs decision changes everything. But that's some major similarities. The polling cycle so far has looked the exact same. The GOP was just as fractured, if not more so, in 2010. And the Democrats had scored some major policy wins. At least that's what they thought. And this year, the Democrats are dealing with, in my opinion, something far worse, which is inflation and a recession that happened under a Democrat's watch. Whether or not you think they should be, they're going to get blamed for that. Anyway, moving to 2014. Going into Labor Day, the Democrats actually had a 1.5% lead in the generic ballot. I think everybody remembers the Republicans won by like 5%. It may have been slightly more. Yeah, so the Democrats lost close to 7% in the polls from Labor Day to November in 60 days. And honestly, if I'm looking at the trend, the actual trend line, the average, Democrats are definitely rising. But as I said, I think when this trend was first noticed after the Dobbs decision, where the Democrats made a major gain, the Republicans actually followed suit, and because that decision came out at the end of June. Republicans went all the way up to a 46% on average, where the Democrats were at 44%. Then both fell, and at the bottom of the fall, Republicans were at 44%, Democrats were at 42%. Then the Democrats rose, but the Republicans didn't fall in response. Republicans were about 45%, Democrats were about 45.5%, right? And then they've just been dancing around each other since, on average, right? So what's happened here? Basically, all year, the Democrats have been bouncing between 41 and 44%, somewhere in that ballpark. Right now, the RCP average has both at 44.5%. Republicans, pretty much all year, have been bouncing between really 45 and 47, 45 and 47% until the Dobbs decision. Then they've maybe lost a percent. Democrats haven't really gone above their peak this year, which was immediately after the Dobbs decision. And before that, it was sometime in June. And honestly, that's the type of statistical variance I would expect. Just from having watched polls now for 6 years as just making this channel. So this doesn't strike me as unusual or the Democrats doing particularly well. It just seems like people have been less likely to say they support the Republicans. And honestly, a 2% band on average over the course of a year, I think we would all expect that. That's a percent off either way. And when you're talking about an electorate of approximately 150 million people, that's reasonable. And when you're talking about polling that includes 250 million people, again, that's pretty reasonable. So pump the brakes on the hot takes of the Democrats bucking the midterm trend. I'll wait another 2 to 3 weeks before I make any real determination as to whether or not I'm going to shift my forecast. So, sorry to disappoint. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me, so I'm going to call this video and say if you like the content, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I do greatly appreciate them. I'm going to try not to take any extended vacations like that. Again, at least not planned. Anyway, also, one last thing. I've seen some of the polls that I've seen coming out in the past 2 or 3 days have shown movement towards the GOP. So let's, again, pump those brakes on the hot take saying the Dems are going to buck midterm trends. Anyway, take it easy, y'all. Have a nice day. I'll see you next time.